Hello inmates, and welcome back to the cellblock Scorch. This is Styx, and I am vibrating out of my skin, excited to read this Scorch for you. I'm so happy with this piece. The really funny thing about it, though, is that this is actually a fan fiction. This will be the first time that you have heard a fanfic that I wrote on this podcast. And the thing that makes fanfiction difficult in a story form like The Scorch is that if you don't have any previous knowledge of the property that the fic comes from, it's just not going to be as funny. Which is tragic, okay, because this piece is very funny. And I have labored for so long on this episode trying to figure out the perfect amount of context to give you before I read it so that you will think it's funny. This is important, okay? I need you to know that it's funny. But if I explain the joke too much, then it becomes immediately unfunny. This is the nature of jokes. If you need to explain, the joke is already dead. So that's the struggle that I'm having here, and I hope that you'll be sympathetic towards me in this difficult time. I have written, just so you know, I've written a lot of this story. This is just a small piece of it, and I am planning on posting it on a fanfiction website sometime in the near future, hopefully by the end of the year. It won't be finished by then, but it will start posting. I hope. Now, as Octo mentioned when she gave you her prompt as a teaser for this episode, this fanfiction is for the show Teen Wolf. Teen Wolf, as the name suggests, is a teenage supernatural drama. The main character in the first episode gets bitten by a werewolf and turns into a werewolf. I believe that the show is based on an earlier movie, an 80s movie, by the same name. So the premise is the same as the movie if you're familiar with the movie and not the show. So, episode 1, the main character gets bitten by a werewolf, turns into a werewolf, all kinds of supernatural plots and horrors occur. That's not actually that important. What you need to know going into this Scorch is just a handful of characters. The main character of the show who gets bitten by the werewolf is Scott McCall. And he has a best friend who sort of fills this sidekick role named Styles Stilinski. Styles Stilinski is the fan favorite character. And basically all fan fiction that's written about Teen Wolf is written about Styles. I also wrote about Styles because I'm basic, and also because Styles is the best and most interesting character. Genuinely. So you'll need to know about Styles. He's our main character in this piece. Styles is kind of deranged. He's really excited about the supernatural things that happen. And he's the one who kind of puts them in dangerous positions in the first place. His dad is the sheriff, so that also gets him kind of a get-out-of-jail-free card in certain situations, which he abuses. He's fundamentally a good character, but also a chaotic character, and a little too curious for his own good. Now, because this is a teen drama, there is a subplot with lacrosse, which continues to be very important for, basically at least the first 2 or 3 seasons. It's kind of funny, actually, how important lacrosse is to these characters when there are things that are literally trying to eat them. But you know what? High school boy priorities, I guess. I don't know a thing about it. Anyways, the lacrosse coach, Coach Finstock, Coach Bobby Finstock, is a bit of a gruff personality. He's known for verbally abusing his students. He doesn't have kids as far as we know. But, he's a very dynamic character. And he also has a favorite student to bully. And that student is Greenberg. Greenberg is not important to the show. Greenberg is just a running joke that happens. But you need to know about this running joke, okay? Finstock constantly bullies Greenberg because Greenberg is pathetic, okay? I'm going to give you a short list of things that we know about Greenberg. All right? Greenberg has Coach Finstock's number and tries to call him on Friday nights. Greenberg gets Coach Finstock the Best Coach Ever mug in one of the episodes. Teacher Appreciation Day, I think it is. Greenberg is also apparently one of the only players on the lacrosse team who is worse than Styles. Greenberg is responsible for causing a pink eye outbreak at one point. Greenberg is also held back several years, which we know because Coach Finstock makes a cutting remark about it. So I hope you're getting the picture of who Greenberg is as a character in the show. The other really important thing that you need to know about Greenberg is that Greenberg is an unseen character. When I say unseen character, I mean that we, the audience, never see Greenberg's face. We never hear Greenberg's voice. There has never been an actor cast to play Greenberg. Greenberg is just someone that we hear about from other characters. Usually it's Finstock. Other characters have been seen, however, to at least acknowledge that Greenberg exists. I guess this kind of makes sense from a production standpoint, where, like, if you have a character who's designed to be the butt of every single joke, you don't actually usually want to put a person in that position to be that character. You don't ultimately want to create that caricature of a real person. There are stereotypes that are so easy to throw onto that type of character that are really ableist and racist and all kinds of bad. So ultimately good things, I think, that we don't give Greenberg a face, this quintessentially uncool character. Greenberg does make an appearance in my piece, and you will get to see what I did with that. It's gonna be fun. So I think that's all of the Teen Wolf background that you need to have a good time in the Scorch today. To summarize, we've got Scott McCall, who was bit by a werewolf. We've got Styles Stalinsky, who is chaotic and curious and charismatic, very cool and interesting character. We've got Coach Finstock, who occasionally, lightheartedly, bullies students. It's funny, though. And we've got Greenberg, who is the butt of all of these jokes. The only other piece of information that you are going to need to have a truly delightful time here is that this is a piece of a larger fan fiction that I've been writing. And in the larger fan fiction, I send Styles, who is my main character, back to before the events of the series, and his presence in the pre-series is going to help avert some of the tragedies that happen in canon. It's what we call a fix-it fic. Sort of. And now that I have spammed you with all of that information for way too long, we are going to read the piece, and hopefully I haven't already beaten this horse to death. Hopefully we'll all have a good time. It's called Becoming Greenberg. They end up in a little Italian restaurant because, according to Coach Finstock, pasta is a runner's whiskey. What the hell is that supposed to mean? Styles wants to know, to which Finstock replies, by the time I'm done with you, your blood will be 0.1% tomato sauce. Which is one of the more visceral and frightening threats that Styles has received in his lifetime. Styles orders a classic chicken parmesan. Finstock orders a deep-fried spaghetti carbonara drowned in ranch dressing, with extra bacon. Before this very moment, Styles did not know that such a thing existed, and now that he does, he wishes he did not. They argue for 4 minutes in front of the waiter over whether Finstock will have fries or a house salad on the side. An argument that Finstock wins, but only because Styles is a teenager displaced in time, without a phone, a home, or a social security card, and only Finstock's tenuous grasp on the concept of goodwill stands between him and a night in the gutter. I know I gave you 5 years before you die of liver failure, Styles grumbles as the waiter practically sprints away from the table. But I honestly think a heart attack might hit you first. I'll tell you right now, kid, Finstock says, slumping back in the booth with an expression stuck halfway between irritation and triumph. I'm not dying until I've outlived that girl who said I looked like a chipmunk on cocaine in 8th grade. He sucks on his teeth. Death is coming for you, Haley Tiller, and I will be there to see it. Listen, Coach, I appreciate a vengeful fantasy as much as the next guy, Styles says. But if you want to achieve your goals, you gotta put in a little effort. That's ridiculous, Finstock splutters. His feathered hair sticks up over the top of the chair. Don't tell me what to do. Don't make me pull out a goddamn sports metaphor, Coach, Styles says, raising his eyebrows in a challenge. I think we'd both find that demeaning. The food arrives, and Styles watches Finstock dig in with horrified fascination. The man eats like a half-starved coyote who's come across a small cat in the neighbor's backyard. Actually, no. Styles is intimately familiar with the eating habits of half-starved coyotes, and this is worse. He considers filming it and putting it on YouTube as a weird indie horror movie. By the time Styles remembers his own meal, Finstock has all but finished. He orders dessert while Styles eats in an almost trance-like state of shock. A flicker of movement at the door draws Styles' attention. With casual ease, his dad steps inside. Styles freezes. He watches his dad with unblinking eyes like a deer staring straight into the lights of an oncoming car. Sheriff Noah Stilinski smiles. The same friendly smile he gives his deputies on their lunch breaks. He wipes his shoes. Claudia used to harass him for tracking mud into the house. And addresses the hostess by name. He always says at least one Stilinski needs to be able to remember people's names. The hostess nods and motions vaguely in Styles' direction. Shit, Styles says, snapping back into his body in time to duck his head. Panic clutches at Styles' chest. Half of him wants to throw himself into his dad's arms, and the other half knows that if his dad sees him here, he'll have questions Styles can't answer, not without putting him in danger. The sheriff doesn't deserve to be dumped into the supernatural world this early. What? Finstock says. He cranes around in his seat, scanning the restaurant with an almost impressive lack of subtlety. You can't let him see me, Styles says breathlessly, sliding further down into his seat. Who, the sheriff? Of course the sheriff, Styles bites. He hesitates, then ducks all the way under the table, balling himself up on the sticky floor. Why not? Finstock says. He ducks his face under the table and raises an eyebrow skeptically. You in trouble with the law? Because I'll be honest with you, kid. You're not nearly a good enough player for me to cover up a criminal record for you. You do that? Styles asks, scandalized enough to snap out of his swirling emotions. Nothing you can prove, Finstock says smugly. Styles almost rolls his eyes back, but the sound of his dad's voice around the corner draws his attention. Really, he says urgently, he can't see me. Why? Finstock insists. His frown returns full force. Styles scrambles for a good excuse. His dad comes closer to the booth. Kid, Finstock presses. His dad is so close he can't think. But he needs to think. He needs to come up with a reason. I'm undocumented, Styles blurts out. He and Finstock stare at each other for a long time. You, Finstock says flatly. Yeah, me, Styles says, speaking faster than he can think. Don't do the whole racial profiling thing, dude. That's not cool. Uh-huh, Finstock says, clearly not buying it. Where are you from? Styles blinks and says the first thing that comes to mind. Poland. You know what? Finstock says. Might as well be Poland. He lifts his head back up just as the sheriff walks past the table. The sheriff's feet stop. Bobby Finstock. That you? Hey there, Sheriff, says Finstock. Just dropping my fork. Hey, you wouldn't mind getting a new one for me, would you? He asks the hostess. And one of those cookies? Just a moment, sir, the hostess says primly. I'll just get the sheriff settled, and then I'll take care of that for you. Oh, that's all right, says the sheriff. Come to think of it, there's something I needed to discuss with Bobby anyway. The hostess hesitates, then says, Well then, I'll leave you two to talk for a moment and take you to your own booth when I come back. That sounds great, Cheryl. Thank you, says the sheriff, and the hostess's shiny black shoes turn around and step back toward the kitchen. Sheriff, meanwhile, steps a little closer. Mind if I sit down for a second? Of course, make yourself comfortable, says Finstock. Styles thumps his fist into Finstock's chin irritably. The sheriff's legs start shuffling in under the table, and Styles shuffles frantically away, pressing his body in the small space between the end of the booth and Finstock's legs. Oh, says the sheriff, his voice closer now. Sorry, I didn't notice. Is someone here with you? He must have seen Styles's plate. My nephew, Finstock lies easily. Styles is almost impressed. He's in the bathroom right now. All right, well, I'll be quick then. The sheriff shifts slightly, leaning in over the table. Good news, Bobby. The Newports decided not to press charges. I told you they wouldn't, Finstock says triumphantly. Bunch of Bobby. The sheriff cuts in sternly. Styles stares at his feet, tucking his hands under his armpits to keep himself from reaching out. He's never wanted to hug his dad so badly in his life. Overhead, he hears Finstock sigh. Fine. This time, you got lucky, the sheriff says. But listen to me, all right? You have to be careful about these things. I don't want to haul you off to jail either, you understand me? All right, Finstock grumbles. I'll be careful. You'd better be, the sheriff says sternly. Then his voice softens slightly. You know we're all rooting for you, Bobby. I know, Finstock says. The waitress returns. A new fork for you, sir, and here's that cookie. Would you two like a little more time to talk? No, thank you, Cheryl. I think we're done here, says the sheriff. His legs turn slightly as he addresses Finstock again. Well then. His hands thud on the table near Styles's head. I'll leave you to your family time. Have a good night, Bobby.
Same to you, Sheriff. Same to you. The sheriff's legs slide out of the booth and follow the hostess out of sight. Styles counts to 30 before he dares to shuffle around. Finstock kicks him irritably. Get out of there, he grumbles. Styles squirms partially up onto the bench and peeks out over the edge of the table. Finstock glares at him, his arms folded over his chest. Start explaining, he says. Styles wiggles back up onto the seat, his eyes darting nervously. Explain what? Why I should continue to harbor an illegal immigrant to start, Finstock says. From the goodness of your heart? Styles suggests hopefully. Finstock raises his eyebrows. Try again. To spite the government? Finstock visibly weighs these words. Nope, he says at last. Not worth it. Because you need at least 3 subs to play in lacrosse tournaments? Styles tries. Finstock frowns. Damn it, you're right. Styles shoots him a winning smile. Finstock makes a face and chomps down on his cookie. Half of it crumbles away in his hand. How the hell did you end up here, of all places? By plane, Styles says, acting casual. I can't believe this, Finstock says, taking another bite of his cookie. More of it crumbles to the table, leaving only a small chunk between his fingertips. Finstock motions widely at the mess. You see this? This is my will to live, crumbling away as we speak. How'd you get on the plane, dumbass? You sure you want to know? Styles bluffs, because it seems like your relationship with the law is kind of tense already and you might benefit from a little plausible deniability, if you know what I mean. Finstock stuffs the last piece of cookie into his mouth and chews it loudly, glowering the whole time. God, you're diabolical, he says. Then he raises his hand to hail a waiter and calls for the check. The next afternoon, Coach slaps a thick stack of papers on the table in front of Styles. You want to play on my team? You need papers, he says. Styles tenses, already dreading the forms upon forms that he'll have to fill out, and the forms upon forms he won't be able to. But when he reaches for the top sheet of paper, he realizes that all the information is already filled out. He sits up and sifts rapidly through the stack. School papers, medical papers, vaccination records, a couple old debit cards and a recent credit card, and at the bottom, a birth certificate that puts him squarely at 16 years old. He stares at the name scribbled across the top. You got a problem, you take it up with the Federal Naming Service like anybody else, Coach says. I didn't spend 6 months and 2 paychecks on my name change so that fairy princesses like you could complain about what's on your birth certificate. You named me? Styles chokes on the words. Cody Greenberg, Coach says proudly. After an old college friend died on 9/11, God rest his soul. The real Greenberg died in a terrorist attack? Styles asks, reeling. What? No, it was alcohol poisoning. Obviously. I should have known that from the very clear and unambiguous way you presented it. Finstock nods solemnly. Still seems like a cheap shot to poison someone's whiskey, but who am I to judge? Styles blinks. Wait, like deliberate poisoning? Well, the official court ruled it an accident. His wife ended up with 4 years for manslaughter, Finstock says. Strong woman. I should call her. See if she wants to grab a drink sometime. Maybe a drink isn't the wisest idea, Styles points out. Finstock makes a considering expression. Styles shakes himself, focusing on the actual issue. Greenberg, he says. Styles is Greenberg. Styles is Greenberg. Congratulations, says Coach, slapping him hard on the shoulder. Styles just stares at the birth certificate, mute. By the way, Coach says, circling around the kitchen counter for his toast. This means you owe me. If you turn out to be a serial killer, you gotta leave me for last. You named me Greenberg, Styles says, affronted. I might actually kill you first. God, this generation is so ungrateful. It's a name, kid, and frankly, it's better than any of the other things I'm tempted to call you. You realize I could get you fired for using slurs against a student, right? Finstock grins, and Styles senses a sort of untethered glee behind his eyes. Years of offhand abuse flash before Styles' eyes. A phrase he's heard thousands and thousands of times. And here he is, about to hear Finstock say it for the very first time. Once he says it, it's over. Styles' fate is sealed. There's no bouncing back from that. But it's as inevitable as the rising of the sun. Finstock says, "Shut up, Greenberg."
Hey, it's Octo again, coming at you with judge comments. I'm around so much recently, it's great. So, this week was a good time, because my prompt is very silly, and I got a whole bunch of very silly things. But Styx won out on the silliest thing because, for a little context, we as a friend group were in the middle of slogging through Teen Wolf, okay? And in doing so, we created many silly little AUs and stuff, because that's what you do when you watch subpar media with your friends. You talk about the ways to make it better. Or at least you should, because it really improves the experience. But this particular piece is an excerpt from this fanfic that they were thinking about writing, and then actually went and wrote. And it's so funny. It's just making it, like, canon compliant, but not a genius move. So silly. And I enjoy Styx's writing style a lot. I think it carries off a very, like, complex kind of humor to it, where things are, like, very serious, but also at the same time, we're having a good time. And I appreciate that in a piece of, literature. And that is why Styx won this week. And you should go, and if you do have access to Patreon, read everybody else's stuff, because it was also good, but I can only choose one winner, which is sad. And that's all for me. Keep that fire burning.
Alrighty. So I realized that I forgot to give you the prompt that Octo gave me when I was doing the intro for this episode, so I'll do that now. The prompt was, "My will to live, he crumbles like the shortbread cookie," which I incorporated into this story idea because it was really easy to imagine Coach Finstock saying something along those lines. I'll try to keep my closing comments kind of brief because everything else has been kind of super long, but the reason that I like this piece so much and the concept itself is so funny for me is because I don't actually think that Greenberg is a character that deserves to be hated, and I don't think that Finstock hates him. In the show, Finstock has a line where he's like, I yell a lot, but you guys know I don't actually hate you, right? Well, except for Greenberg, but he's Greenberg, so that's different. And it's kind of meant just to be a funny line, but for me, I was like, wouldn't it be funny if Greenberg is different and you can hate Greenberg because you love Greenberg, and Greenberg is like your son or nephew or family member of some kind. And at some point that fused into this whole idea of a time travel styles where you never see Greenberg's face because if you did, it would just be Styles again, literally the exact same. A funny mental image for me. Also really funny for me to have the most beloved character go back in time and become the most belittled character. Because it establishes, the base complexity of both characters, the beloved and the belittled. I don't know. Mostly it's just for kicks and giggles, and I had a really good time. I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. Obviously, it's hard to say. If you happen to be a Teen Wolf fan who's listening to this, and you know what those characters are supposed to sound like, I'm sorry. I tried, and I failed a lot of times, and this is the best you're gonna get. Sorry. If you are a Teen Wolf fan and you didn't mind how I butchered the characters' voices, and you would like to read more, it will be on the Archive of Our Own. As I said, hopefully by the end of this year. With that, I will give you my prompt for the next week, which was coping with a mid-story genre shift. Bones won that week because Bones has an existing story idea that is just so perfectly suited for this prompt. I didn't think about that when I gave the prompt, but as soon as I got the pieces in, I was like, oh, this is perfect. So you'll hear me on that episode giving you my comments. I think it's a really fun piece. The embers are also really fun. And that's all I have for you. Keep those fires burning, everybody.
The Cellblock Scorch is a production of Stellacore, an independent group of nerds sharing their obsessions with the world. Links to all our projects, including Instagram, Tumblr, YouTube, Patreon, and Ko-Fi, can be found on our Linktree, posted in each episode description. Follow us on Tumblr or Instagram to see the prompt of the day before the episode drops, and a quote from each Scorch the day after. If you would like to support our creative endeavors, you can give a one-time tip to the Ko-Fi of the writer of your favorite Scorches, or check out our Patreon. There, you can access the Scorches and episode transcripts for free, or sign up for Spark level support for $5 a month to gain access to our embers as well.